absolute banger, a slugfest. And it's a really important one for both players. In the bottom right side, we're looking at the main base of our French Protoss. Twitch chat doesn't believe in him, but I do. It's DnS.
His opponent in the Northwest, the red Protoss player, he is Hellraiser.
I think Romanticide is the perfect map, Nate, to get hopefully a proper late game between these two. It's very, very hard to end games when it's 3 base against 3 bases. Even 4 base against 4 base, I feel like it's just a little difficult to find those openings. So it's either 1 base nonsense or 2 base nonsense, or we're guaranteed for 5 base plus. That's kind of how I see Romanticide.
Yeah, that's the way it goes, right? I mean, you've got a great defensive setup on this map. I feel like we've had this map now for long enough that people have kind of figured out all the kind of ways that you can play around it, get your economy going. And there, the spots where you would try to hide something, there's only so many that aren't that easy to scout. If your probe, for example, sees that something is missing, but based on the probe scouts going into each other's base, Kev, I don't think there's anything here that really stands out for either player. Is there anything in particular they're looking for in the current meta that maybe is like, okay, as long as I don't see this, I'm okay?
You're looking for this, exactly what is happening. 2 gateways on the high ground, 2 pylons in the main base. That is what you're looking for. If that's not happening, then you start worrying about everything else. You also want to send a probe out to the other side of the map early in case they do something wild. Like, we know MaxPex is a very big fan of just the low ground pylon, gateway, and a quick nexus. If you go up against stuff that's very different than what you're doing, you want to know ASAP, because this is technically the least economic opening of them all. So if your opponent is doing something a lot more greedy or trying to get a quicker nexus up, you just want to have some time to think about what is the best way to deal about it. Whether you want to proxy a gate, robos, target yourself, or just expand, you just want to know ASAP. So that's why that's the most important thing, I think, early on in PvP.
All right, that loves the breakdown. So he's got the 2 adepts coming, and there's the Stargate being built for Hellraiser. So the first commitment to that tech that we're seeing, DnS is getting 2 sentries. So gonna have a little bit more of that force field or maybe extra energy for a hallucination scout, and he'll get his Nexus up earlier because he's got Hellraiser's spot blocked, so he can't really build there. As these adepts approach the base, are we expecting him to be able to get much done with this? I think the Hallucinated Phoenix gets the immediate scout on the adepts outside the base, but there's the pylon, so they shouldn't be able to get inside.
The pylon scout by DnS on the other side of the map is actually very nice. Now, I don't think the first 2 adepts got a lot done, Nate, but I think by the time that Hellraiser has 4 adepts and an oracle, that's where things get dicey. Because I'll tell you, it's a living nightmare trying to keep sentries alive against adepts and oracles, as both of those units deal double damage against light armored units, which sentries qualify as 1. So the first 2 adepts, not really, but 4 adepts and an oracle, that's gnarly to deal with.
Okay, well, we'll definitely have to keep our eyes on that, where those stalkers are positioned, especially, right? I mean, at least they do a bit of extra damage to the oracle. These guys kind of forced in the ramp. I think he got the probe that warped in the shield battery, but the sentries all seem to be safe still. And I was kind of wondering if maybe his goal with this was like block off between the bases and then sneak the oracle into the mineral line to kill probes. But now that's not really as much an option because the adepts are gone. So it should be a little bit of an easier defense now from DnS.
Yep, I don't know if that was on purpose or not, that shade finishing up, but I have a really hard time believing that was a choice. He's like, oh yeah, let me just lose 2 adepts while killing 1 probe. That really doesn't make any sense. Because imagine the firepower of 4 adepts and 2 oracles now. You shade on top of that stuff in the natural, everything just dies. Now with 2 adepts and 2 oracles, it might still kind of die. But imagine if you have 2 extra adepts here. The oracles are coming in though. So far, I think I kind of like the defense by DnS. Sure, he's losing a couple sentries, but he kills an oracle. He's going to kill the adepts. I really don't think this is too bad for DnS, but imagine how much more damage Hellraiser would have been able to do if he had 2 extra adepts there.
No, I think that's a really good point. And as I'm sure you saw, right as the adepts came in into that mineral line, they actually attacked the stalker first. The stalker took one of those first hits, so did not immediately get the damage onto the sentries or the probes. But perhaps even more interestingly, back home, it's just Immortals and Void Rays that Hellraiser is building, Rotterdam. This does not appear to be a gateway focused build or setup from him. He has warp gate, he has 2 gateways, but this is definitely not something that I would say shakes up as the standard PvP, right?
Nope, this is your Diamond League Protoss. I build a really strong army build, you know. Immortals and Void Rays, baby, like they're really good, right? Hellraiser even getting a second Stargate. This is going to be wild. It is important for DNS. I think you just get a monstrous economy against this. I think you can stay on 3 gases for a very long time against this stuff. This scout is very important, by the way. DNS needs to pay attention. Now he sees it, and it's so important to get an early scout on this if you're DNS, because now you know, all right, I want to get Stalks to deal with the Void Rays, but I definitely want to get a couple of Zealots with charge on the ground as well to make sure that the Immortals don't Shrek my Stalkers. But yeah, this is, let's just say it's different what Hellraiser is showing us here.
I think that's a very mild way of putting it, Kev. We've got +1 air now on the way for Hellraiser. He's got a second Stargate, still building Void Rays, and taking that 3rd Nexus. But yeah, he's building 2 Void Rays at a time. So you talked about the uber late game, and I don't know if he's going to try to do some sort of timing attack with his Void Ray Immortal army, Roddy, but this is also the kind of style that if he has some shield batteries set up, it could be really hard to break him if he just tries to just rush, basically, right, to that big air army that we know Protoss players have been enjoying recently.
Yeah, if it's like a smaller map, there's actually a chance that the Immortal Void Ray army moves out at a very awkward moment where you're like, whoa, that's actually like really powerful because the other guy isn't ready. On the Romenta side, I think if anything, it's the opposite. It's going to be DNS who will attack Hellraiser. I do think it's very important to choose your attack wisely, because if you attack 3 base against 3 base, and if you lose a fight against Void Ray Immortal, well, wrap it up, because you're done, okay? If you lose all your gateway units against that army, then you're just no longer going to win that anymore. DNS seems to be very aware of that, so he's like, you know what? I'm just going to rush up to 4 bases, and I think DNS's game plan here is to just be like, I will always have 1 base more than you, maybe 2. Look at the production tab, man. That's 8 gateways. That is a Le Explosion de Gate if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, and as you said, with that 4th base going up before Hellraiser, it can kind of take a little bit of that almost like anti-mech approach, right? Where you're going to have the more rounded out composition and you're going to go for a much bigger economy, be able to throw units away a little bit more easily, or be able to just, continuously reinforce off of something like a Prism and keep that pressure up. Oracle comes in, grabs 4 probes and dips, and another Stargate booting up for Hellraiser back across the map. Still no fleet beacon yet.
Yeah, that's weird. I feel like he should have had that by now, no? Like, I cannot imagine that you want to max out on Void Rays. I'm sure that he wants to maybe get a Robo Bay for Disruptors. And eventually, don't you want to get some carriers, mate? Because now even +1 air weapons is done. He can't even start +2 air weapons because he doesn't have a fleet beacon. That's really weird to me.
Yeah, that's the number one thing I was like, well, he can't start +2 or go. He can't build carriers or anything else either, right? He can only just keep building Void Rays, which are not bad against Stalkers. I mean, we know that Void Rays are obviously a very strong unit against the meat and potatoes of Protoss normal armies. But he's also making that investment into the cannons, the shield batteries. We're seeing Hellraiser attempt to fortify his stronghold, as it were, and kind of just say, yeah, if you want to attack me, you'll probably die. So we're going straight to the late game.
And I think DnS says, oh, I know, and I don't want to attack you. But if you try to go up to 4 bases, I will attack you. That seems to be the game plan here of DnS, who's also getting his own Stargate. And I won't be surprised if he gets a fleet beacon very early, right? Yeah, his target is done. He's actually going for an Oracle. Now, this is where I think the game gets really interesting. DnS knows that Hellraiser is going to try to take the low ground. At this point, though, I gotta say, it's not an overwhelming amount of anti-air. It's 4 Archons, soon to be 5 Archons, and 10 Stalkers. This is going to get interesting. And if I'm DnS, I would really fight before shield batteries are up. Because if you're forced to take a fight into static defenses, then it's going to be really hard. If he wants to go Nate, he better goes right now.
Yeah, striking down the 4th base especially has to be one of the biggest objectives, right? Just keep the economic advantage, prepare yourself to try and either make a transition into something that can deal with this, or beat him at his own game. Maybe get that 2 or 3 base advantage and just say, okay, well, now I can build more Void Rays or whatever than you. We haven't really seen him invest into that air beyond the Oracle, which I was also wondering a little bit about where he wants to go there. And here he comes on top of this 4th. so many Void Rays getting in position to try and fight against this, but he doesn't have everything that was there behind. However, that may not matter. There's just so many of them. 17 Void Rays to 11 Stalkers and 3 Archons. Kev, he's going to get that 4th base up without much trouble. And now DNS has to be thinking to himself, okay, what am I going to do against the Giga Chad Sky Toss army that's coming my way?
These flybys are actually terrifying because look at DNS's main base. 4 gateways powered by 1 pylon, 4 gateways powered by 1 pylon. He's in danger of losing a main base, but he's also in danger of losing production to like 8 gateways. And that'd be pretty terrifying. Like, you can't really blink into the main with a couple of Stalkers either. You need your entire army here. Maybe the Forge? Man, he actually goes for the wrong pylon. That's the only pylon that only powered 2 gateways.
Yeah, and he's going to turn on the prismatic alignment. We see the Stalkers begin to melt. There is still the splash damage from the Archons that can contribute to the defense, but he decides, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to bleed out a few Void Rays on the retreat, keep moving around, and I can't really say that it's too bad for him. He picked off a huge amount of infrastructure, picked off a whole base, got a decent amount of probe kills. Back on the other side, the Carriers and Immortals deal with the Zealot counterattack. But that's, I mean, there lies the rub, Kev. He's got Carriers with +3 coming in, still has Void Rays out on the map. And DNS, he's just kind of progressively getting put in this spot where if he just chills and sits in the middle of the map, those Void Rays are going to head back into his main, start ripping things apart, and Hellraiser keeps expanding. What do you even do in a situation like this?
Well, you don't have your army in the middle of the map for no reason. This is bad. These are the pylons I was talking about, by the way. That's 1 pylon powering 4 gateways, and he's not just going to lose. DNS is actually going to try to attack, but the carrier count, like you said, already at 3. Can he deny this base from going up? I feel like this army at this point is not good enough. I don't know if a recall is available for the Void Rays, though, because you do kind of want your Void Rays at home. This attack may not be that bad, but it's not going to stop the carriers from popping.
No, well, he kills the 4th base of Hellraiser, and it looks like DNS is going to push the ramp, and it feels like a weird, like, I don't even know if I can use the word base trade, because there's so much that Hellraiser would need to get through to kill DNS, and all he is doing is just defending, but the next 3 carriers came out. He's got 6 of them with some cannon battery, immortal support, so he's holding on as best he can as that main base gets killed. Hellraiser is going to recall the Voids, and I think now the full force of his army should be able to make the stop as DNS maybe realizing that he's bit off a bit more than he can chew.
Yep, 1 or 2 storms are left over, and that's kind of nice, but the rest of the army of DNS just kind of sucks. I do believe we once more had a couple of Zealots in the main base, and that's actually going to give DNS some time. DNS is firing up a mothership, and I have to say that's the most confusing mothership I've seen, because literally the entire army of Hellraiser flies. Why does DNS feel like he needs a mothership?
Is he hoping that DNS, does he hoping that Hellraiser won't have an observer with his army or something weird? Because he'll still kill the mothership in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So, and he has observers. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe he just wants to see chat type -400, 400, regardless how this game ends.
I mean, Hellraiser is about to get a mothership, but for his army, I do like it because it's obviously a crap ton of HP, and Stalker's DPS is not that high. DNS is in serious trouble. Even if he's up 19 workers and he's got some money in the bank, losing that Forge that had +3, that is actually a very big deal because that means his Archons are less powerful, the Stalkers don't have that one-shot potential. DNS is actually going to buy some time with his Stalkers on the other side of the map. If I'm Hellraiser, I don't even care anymore, man. Good luck killing all these cannons with your Stalkers. It's going to take 7 years. If I'm Hellraiser, I try to end the game with this army, and I really think this army is powerful enough to end the game.
Yeah, he's continuing to bring that pressure, and DNS, he actually just lost the Cybernetics core. That was his second one after rebuilding it from earlier, so he can no longer warp in Stalkers to reinforce. He's getting some High Templar, he's getting a bunch of Zealots, but he doesn't have the ability to even build the units that he would need to try and stop this, Kev. So while DNS has his Stalkers in that main base, as long as Hellraiser can keep clearing through this and create that lopsided scenario where he can't really fight against this army anymore, then he can just recall to his final base back home and try to reset from there. However, DNS is spread across the map. He is attacking the only bases that Hellraiser can use in this game. So he's going to have to come back home and try to defend this, right?
Yeah, I think if I'm Hellraiser, I go home right about now. That is exactly what he does. He recalls towards the natural, and that's actually the base where DNS didn't have vision. So DNS might not be totally aware of it. I mean, this was cool by DNS, but I feel like it's only really cool if you've got 4 running bases and you're sitting on 4K, because he just lost a lot of stuff at home that he really can't reproduce. He's on 29 probes, and his army, he's down 40 army supply. But that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that Hellraiser's army is 5 times as strong.
Yeah, he killed a couple of the Stargates, but Hellraiser's going to rebuild 3 of them right now, and he's still got some money. Hellraiser hasn't. He wasn't able to get out to that 4th base, but DnS, he lost all of the bases outside of those original 3, so he's just off. They're both kind of just running off the fumes of that natural and that 3rd. DnS is going to try and take a pocket base in the southwest, or a hidden base, see if he can squeeze that one by, as the Void Rays are going to come into contact with these Stalkers, and there's the Oracle Revelation to keep tabs on them.
I mean, what DnS has are 11 Archons. If these 11 Archons get underneath clumped up Void Rays, yeah, sure. If they kill the Interceptors, yeah, sure. But normally, I don't really see a way for the army of DnS to beat the army of Hellraiser. Maybe if all the Interceptors clump up trying to kill the mothership.
If they all get clumped inside the time warp and all the Archons shoot at the exact perfect spot, then maybe they'll die. But Hellraiser, he's keeping the real part of his army, the carriers themselves, outside the range of those Archons. The Guardian Shield is going to help, but once the Archons are dead, there is nothing left to deal with this for DnS. The mothership goes bye-bye, baby, and we are up 100 supply for Hellraiser on top of DnS. GG, and the red Protoss player takes game number 1. Well, Kev, we talked about the potential for this series to be a wild one, and that first game is already just a whole lot of looking around and making sure there's not some Void Rays hiding behind my green screen, and wow, what a game.
Yeah, no, Hellraiser busting out a threat that I really don't think you can bust out on any other map than the Romanticide or Death Aura in the past, but we don't have that anymore. And I didn't hate what DnS was doing, where he just said, all right, my approach is going to be, I'm going to prevent you from going up to 4 bases. And I feel like at first it looked like he was succeeding in that, but then he kind of chased up the ramp a little bit. And that's where Immortals were protected by shield batteries and cannons. And all the Void Rays, they actually had that sweet spot where they don't have to expose themselves to fight. Because you saw at first when Hellraiser went to the low ground, if all the Voids are exposed, they will actually die kind of quick. But if they are above these weird spaces where ground units can't really go, that's actually ideal, because then you have 8-9 Void Rays very clumped up, because they are units shooting at 1 Archon at a time. And I feel like that's kind of where the game started to slip away, because DnS lost a lot of units, didn't kill the base. And then later on, it was like, maybe I should get Storm, which Storm could be good against Voids because they clump up. But that was after he already lost the base, he lost the Forge, he lost Pylons, he lost Gateways. And that's just not the spot you really want anymore as Gateway player against Skytos player.
Yeah, that definitely excellent points to bring up. And also the Cybernetics Scorch, I didn't even realize he sniped it the first time the Void Rays went into that main base. We talked about him getting the Nexus and a couple pylons, but he forced him to rebuild that. And then it was in a more exposed location the next time that he came around. But I agree with you. I don't think that that's a type of strategy you can really effectively pull off on every map, especially anything other than Romanticide, honestly. So we'll have to see if he's going to switch it up or try to maybe force it again as we go into game 2 on Gigantha, as we have our red Protoss in the northeast leading 1-0. He is Hellraiser.
In the bottom left side, we're looking at the main base of our French Protoss, who's made it into the players of the previous season of the DreamHack Masters, but he is in a bit of trouble in this one. He needs to turn things around. It is DnS.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see with the probe scouts going out. And man, do you run into that? Do you run into a lot of that, Kev? Is that something that lots of players are trying to force these days with these heavy Stargate builds? I know we see them a lot against Zerg and a little bit less often versus Terran, but in PvP, is trying to force the big carriers. Is that something that you run into regularly now?
Not very often, because most of the time it's just so hard for the Skytos player to get up to 4 bases, and then the other guys just going up to 5 and 6, and then eventually, even if they have way like worse Stargate tech, they can transition into carriers and Tempest themselves, and you're just too far behind economically. The only scenarios I find myself facing stress like that is often after a cannon rush. If a cannon rush did like some damage, but not all the damage, but enough to stay in the game, they often try to expand, and then they just make Void Rays and Immortals, and then maybe carriers. But as a straight up threat, I think you don't see it very often, unless it is indeed Romanticide.
Makes sense. That's got to be the best defensive map, right? We talk about why that's good for all of those sorts of builds. So as the Cybernetics cores finish, we'll get a little more insight into where we're going for this map. Hellraiser to Adepts, DnS to Stalkers, and there was a little bit of back and forth, right? We had the Hellraiser Adepts in that last game. They didn't really do a whole lot for him though. So does he play more aggressively with them? I don't think that's really possible. Does he keep them at home? Is he not going to build up to 4? I don't know what the move Hellraiser makes here is, because being aggressive with them last game didn't really seem to do a whole lot for him.
No, I mean, it wasn't the worst thing in the build, because he did kill the sentries a bit later on, and then he obviously got some probes too with the oracles, right? I just think the initial 2 adepts shading on that ramp being stuck, then killing a single probe is something you can do if you're willing to recall them immediately. So you're trading a recall for 1 probe kill. It's obviously not the jackpot, but it's something, right? It's first blood. But you don't want to lose 2 adepts for 1 probe. There's no way.
Yeah, feel that. Nexus going up both sides. Hellraiser does have a probe kind of going around that bottom right side of the map. I don't know if he was looking to avoid being seen for a scout. No, it's going to be for a proxy, or at the very least hiding a pylon that maybe a hallucinated Phoenix would check for. Since DnS did see that he went for those multiple sentries in the last game. 2 are being built right now, while 4 Stalkers cross the map.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting, because 4 Stalkers against 4 Adepts is a fight you gladly take. Once it's 6 Adepts, it's like gets a little bit awkward. And if Hellraiser wipes in 2 more Adepts and it becomes 8, like you can't actually really out-micro 6 Adepts that easily. Oh my goodness, he pretty much gets us around. 1 Adept does fall, but now 1 Stalker falls. That's obviously a good trade. I actually think that it should be very doable for Hellraiser to kill at least 1 more Stalker. With the defensive Stalker warp in, he actually kills 2 more. Wow, this is really well done by Hellraiser. Bit unfortunate for DnS, but well done by our Ukrainian brothers.
Yeah, that was really nice. I was going to say, as soon as DnS started kiting the Adepts, I'm like, okay, he got onto one side of him, but he's kiting back towards Hellraiser's base. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. Those 2 Stalkers that he warped in really paying off. There's not a whole lot to defend here for DnS. And I don't know if he wants to use that pylon aggressively in the southeast, or if he's just going to hide tech there later on. But he's bringing the fight straight to that natural right off the bat.
Actually, really sick how 1 out of 4 shades made it through, and he just canceled 3 out of 4 shades, but not the one that made it into main base. I actually am really impressed by that, because normally all of your adepts are grouped in the same place, right? So it's very hard to immediately find that one, but I guess he selected just this. I don't know how he did that, actually. Because how do you know which shade belongs to which adept?
I have no idea how he pulled it. I thought that they were all going to get blocked, or they were all going to get through, and then just that one kind of threading the needle was nice to see. The sentries on the high ground coming in for some support there. The probes got a little choked up on that too, but the adept threat has been neutralized. Hellraiser sitting pretty at a 7 probe advantage, and it's going to boot up that forge. His blink is not quite as far ahead though as DnS. So he's at least got his versatile toolkit ready. But what are we looking for in this stage? Is it just +1? Are they going to go into like the Immortal Archon charge lot straight away, or do we see a little more Stalker play with how scrappy this game's been?
That's probably what it's going to be. I think a lot of Stalkers with +1, and then once we feel comfortable, we can obviously head into charge lots and Immortals, maybe Archons. I have to admit, I'm still trying to figure out how Hellraiser pulled it off so smoothly. Because if you shade 4 adepts, how the hell do you know exactly which shade belongs to which adept? And how do you cancel 3 out of 4, but not the one you don't want to cancel? I'm genuinely impressed. He did that so quick as well, because the shade was not like he had 5 seconds to figure it out. It was like an 0.1 second kind of thing, where one squeezed through and the other ones did it, and it was perfectly done. I'm really impressed by that move.
Yeah, it was a sick play. He's definitely been bringing it so far in this series, especially considering, that he can't really rely on the same thing he did last game. He's kind of doing it a little bit differently, a couple of adjustments here and there. and it has been a treat to watch as both players now get those third bases up and running. And we have the Prism starting up now too for Hellraiser. So maybe with his blink and his +1, exactly like you were kind of alluding to, Kev, could be seeing that first move out. Maybe he tries to say, hey, I'll take that earlier advantage, or whatever advantage it may be or may not be, and try to make something of it, try to at least take some action and influence some agency in the outcome of this game.
DnS could be in serious trouble here, because Hellraiser is about to be on 6 gateways. DnS is on 2 gateways. DnS is cranking out Immortals, so it feels like he knows that Hellraiser is coming for him, and he just feels that he's gonna have his Immortals in key positions, obviously with a battery or 2. He does have 2 batteries in the natural, 2 batteries in the third, but this is gonna be a very difficult man. Actually, it's only his first Immortal that pops now, and he's gonna queue up a second one. But this is going to be tough because Hellraiser has quite a bit more production than DnS has for quite some time. And on top of that, +1 is done for Hellraiser.
Yeah, he's just got that Immortal backbone and the shield battery here to try and defend. The Stalker count, as you said, heavily in favor of Hellraiser. And he's going to come in, kind of blink straight onto the Nexus, spreading his army around, not focusing the shield batteries. He's fighting probes that are being healed. A slight question mark maneuver there, but he's going to take another blink back up. Okay, shuts down the production inside the main base. The robotics facility has been turned off, kills the Immortal, and at the very least, he could just try to blink straight down to that third base, as his Stalker count has been heavily trimmed by some incredibly aggressive maneuvering, but he's still got the supply lead. So at the end of the day, is it that big of a deal? 58 workers to 41. It's got to be feeling nice for the Red Protoss.
If you talk about decisive, that was really decisive. I felt that was a pretty crazy move to dive into the natural like that, but I actually think it paid off. Sure, he lost quite a few units, but he did a lot of economic damage. He unpowered the Robo, found himself an Immortal, unpowered 2 gateways for a little while, and he was a bit ahead before it started, and I think he's quite far ahead after it started, so it was a success, even if it felt a bit wild and it felt a bit reckless. I think job well done by Hellraiser, who's really just playing an excellent best of 3.
Yeah, controlling really well, and he's been playing very nicely. DnS is going to throw up the Dark Shrine, feeling a bit of the heat on the back of the neck there, stepping out, feeling that pressure coming in. And we know how powerful and influential those Dark Templar can be when utilized properly. If he's not got his eyes open, I think at some point DnS or Hellraiser is going to have to ask himself, like, what should I be worried about? What do I have to consider coming from my opponent, especially with how this game's been going? And if he throws down, maybe a cannon in each mineral line, I don't know how you feel about that. Maybe that's what he does to kind of shore this up, but he could also just keep, investing into spamming out as many units as possible so we can try to force a fight soon too.
A lot of things have indeed gone really well for Hellraiser, but he is playing a dangerous game if he's just set on ending it with his next attack and a couple of Archons, and that kind of feels like what he's gearing up towards. But there is that Dark Shrine that is finishing up, and the Dark Shrine aggressively, totally with you, has a lot of potential. If DnS is able to squeeze in 1 Dark Templar into the 4th base and 1 Dark Templar into the natural or something, it becomes a nightmare. But let's not forget that defensively, the DTs have a crap ton of potential too, because Hellraiser has a single observer on the map, has no observer speed, so if he loses the observer, his attack is over.
That's a really good point too. You need to be protecting and shepherding your detection if you want to move out against a player who can use that. It's a pretty strong like kind of like YOLO move if you're on the defensive side and you're like, if I can just get the observer, the DTs will force him to run away, assuming that the army's not too big to just kind of ignore it. And sometimes ignoring it is why it works. But a double Immortal drop with a huge Zealot warp in from Hellraiser while the army is outside DNS's 4th and 3rd. We see the defensive DTs coming into use, so he has to kind of reveal that card in his hand right off the bat. He sees the Dark Shrine, so he knows what's going on. 3 DTs whacking away at the Immortals. Prism able to pick up 1 of them to save, but it might just be a little too much coming in here, Kev, especially losing the element of surprise with that now and having to use it defensively. DnS is in a rough spot.
I mean, I think if it wasn't for the DTs, DnS would be down now already. He'd be down and out. There is no way for him to win this game. The Dark Templars sort of make this game go on. but he indeed lose all aggressive potential with them. As soon as Hellraiser saw the Darks run, he's like, oh my god, and he gets the cannon in each and every single base that he has. And yeah, DNS now knows that sending DTs to the other side of the map is not really an option anymore. Hellraiser has recalled whatever he felt like he could recall. Even the cleanup of the Prism in the final Immortal wasn't all that. And I think that at this point, Hellraiser is super set on ending this game. He went from 1 observer to 4 observers, by the way. So losing 1 ops is no longer a danger for him either. And it honestly seems like this should be kind of it, unless he takes a very bad fight in range of battery overcharge. But DNS actually getting a bit ahead of himself, and he already popped the overcharge there.
Yeah, so he steps in, kind of gets that going. I'm still not 100% sure that he had to disengage. He has a huge army supply advantage, but he doesn't want to force it, since you know that those Archons are naturally going to trade pretty well against the Zealots once they start to clump up, especially with how, you know, kind of choked off some of these ramps can be. But the Stalkers pull his army back towards the 3rd. The Zealots run down and smite the 4th. And DNS, once again, finds himself in an uncomfortable situation as Hellraiser's on 4 bases. His 4th is totally safe. He's taken the rest of his gases. He's sitting pretty, +3 attack, another robo facility, extra cannons, extra batteries. And DNS, well, he's still trying to rebuild pylons so he can build units again.
Yep, DNS will supply block there for quite some time. Hellraiser is playing a marvelous game, but I really think it'd be a mistake to slow down now. Because if DNS has the opportunity to max out, you give him 5 disruptors, then everything that happened in the last few moments isn't that impactful anymore. So it does seem like Hellraiser is aware of that, and he wants to make something happen with all the Zealots on the left. And now DNS should have learned from this the previous time, where Hellraiser showed just a couple of Stalkers. This is some really cool multi-prong by Hellraiser. DNS is picking up on it though. Can he save that Nexus? The answer is no. But if DNS can just max out one time, Nate, I do think he's still in this game.
The potential is definitely still there. It is a grinded out situation for sure, and he's going to need to win a fight very decisively in a very, very large manner.
Oh wow!
And disruptors, right? I mean, you can kind of make anything happen with disruptors if you control well enough and you're able to land those shots. It opens the game back up. I feel like Hellraiser almost kind of missed an opportunity to try and capitalize on that early advantage. But I think that lead we were talking about is slipping away.
I mean, I think he pretty much had it, man. I really think he could have almost A-move, and I know that's easier said than done because we see everything he doesn't. He doesn't want to throw away a lead, and I do like a lot of the multi-prong he went for, but I would love to see him push the issue a little bit harder. Now, what I was wowing about, Nate, while you were making some solid points, was that DNS, while all of this was happening, sent 2 Dark Templars to the top left side of the map, and those Dark Templars actually got a cancel on the 5th base of Hellraiser. I feel like that's the base Hellraiser really was not supposed to lose, because now we are soon just looking at a 4 base against 4 base scenario. As the armies are flirting with each other, the Zealots of Hellraiser are finding a lot of potential though.
Yeah, that big Zealot run by, I think, was a crucial play as he tries to defend this 4th base. Those disruptors landing on just the Archons. We know that 1 shot is not enough to kill them. The SimCity of these cannons makes it a little bit awkward on this side. The DTs, he did actually get blinked for the Dark Templar DNS. But multiple cannons being at those expansions makes it a little bit trickier, a little bit easier said than done. And he's lost all the expansions. That's it. He's just got his main and his natural. His counterattack was not really able to accomplish what he was looking for. Maybe he can get something done over here if he just focuses this cannon. But I don't see that this is going to be the maneuver that suddenly brings the whole game back again after losing his only 2 fresh faces, really, more or less.
The Hellraiser made half a recall though, and his army is still in the center, but he's the one who fires first, and Hellraiser gets the big shots off. There was maybe a little potential there for DNS, who does get all the disruptors in the end. But Hellraiser, we know that he has the economy to rebuild all these units. DNS does not. Well, if there was a way, Nate, maybe that was the way, but it was Hellraiser who was paying slightly more attention, and he's the one who fired first with the disruptors. He gets all of the remaining disruptors of DNS, and all the DNS really has right now is this army. He is going to try to double expand one more time, but by the time those bases are up and running, Nate, I'm afraid it's going to be a little too late.
Yeah, it takes so much time, right? And it's not even just building those bases. You got to get probes over there. You're going to have to saturate it, and then you have to worry about getting counterattacked again, because Hellraiser's just done a really good job at splitting up his army and making it as difficult as humanly possible for DNS to do a whole lot about this. Do you think that just sticking on this? Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if I should try to theory craft at this point with the supply lead. He could just keep doing the same thing at this point and just overpower him, right?
Oh, the shield battery actually keeps the disruptor alive as the armies are gonna flirt with each other. I think you're right, Nate. I don't think we need to overanalyze anymore. DnS is gonna try one more time, but after losing another Nexus, I think he knows the longer this goes, the worse it gets. There are so many Zealots and Archons coming in from the top. The rest of Hellraiser's army is coming in from the bottom. It's all a little clumsy, but it's a numbers game. And the